There were a lot of monsters in here. Not only did the large conference room contain the day shifters, but the night shifts too. Those who worked the night before had been requested to stay a little extra. From the looks on their sullen faces, they weren't exactly pleased by it. Marcus had arrived a little early, but the sheer numbers of creatures sent revolving shivers throughout his core. There were all sorts of creatures employed by the dungeon, although Marcus was the only Minotaur. Most of his kind worked in the far north, or in the west around the Zalik Isles. Since his first day, Marcus had made friends with a few of the others. Unfortunately, after the incident with Brad, the process of making friends had proven to be more difficult. As he stepped into the conference room, more than a few groups of people gaped at him. Nina sat on the far side of the conference room, but there weren't any open spots around her. Several individuals sat around her and they engaged her in conversation. One of them was a vampire, but not like the one Marcus killed before. For starters, his gaze carried a great deal of overwhelming confidence. He had well-trimmed facial hair that accentuated his attractiveness. His skin was pale, but his irises were blood red. The vampire wore a fine dark blue suit and brown loafers. The second person beside Nina was a woman, only she was made entirely of crackling black energy. Her eyes were two white ovals of power, and her mouth was also bright white. Aside from that, the woman was naked, though nothing could be seen. The last gentleman beside Nina was a gargantuan man, sewn together from different body parts. He had a pair of mismatched eyes, various skin colors, and even differently shaped ears. The man wore shiny black leather pants, was topless, and had crazy tattoos all over his mismatched, pieced-together body. Nina saw Marcus and gave him a little wave before delving back into the conversation with the others. The vampire also glanced over at him, kept the stare, and then placed his hand on Nina's inner thigh. She didn't even flinch or react abnormally. Marcus sighed, and he searched the crowd for any open spot. Avery was on the other side of the room, surrounded by strangers, and they didn't even notice Marcus. Lars sat close to Nina's side, but he was all alone, amidst several other groups talking to themselves. Someone waved at him. Marcus focused on the person and then smiled a little. Karen had an open spot beside her, and it looked to be large enough to accommodate him. When Marcus made it over to her, Karen's face swirled with greens and yellows.
Hey! Good morning.
Good morning to you as well.
He sat down.
So this is my first staff meeting. This is kind of exciting. I had no idea so many monsters worked for the dungeon.
Yeah, I'll be honest, it's not usually like this. Management only requires all staff to be present when serious stuff happens.
Marcus regarded the other monsters around him again.
I wonder what this could be about. We've had some pretty steady invasions recently, once every 2 to 4 days.
Karen nodded.
Yeah, business has been pretty good. But I wonder, has it been too good?
It's funny you mention that. I got a letter from one of my moms. I told her all about the recent activity going on, and she says it could be a mixed blessing.
Oh, how so?
Well, if we're doing well, then it means 2 things. First, the boss we're working with is either keeping something extremely valuable here, or they're doing something extremely unsettling. I've not heard of a massive treasure hoard, and since we're a research facility, I'd probably wager on the second option.
I'd say that's a fair assessment. I've not heard of a treasure hoard either, and I've worked here for 3 years.
Marcus smiled.
Which leads me to the second thing. Clearly, we're already attracting a constant flow of murder hobos. Eventually, even more powerful murder hobos might come and try to seek their fortunes.
With stronger adversaries, our boss could have stronger specimens to experiment with. You mentioned one of your moms works for a site, right? How's her facility doing?
Yeah. She told me that her site has had so little activity that her boss had to lay some people off. It makes sense for her location. She works at the Demon Gate Temple, and they don't have much murder hobo traffic.
That sounds like a cushy gig.
Karen's face lit up with pink streaks.
Yeah, but I don't know if I'd want...
Andrew's voice cut through the air.
Hey, shut it. Let's get started, all right? I'm sure the night crew's itching to head out.
A bunch of the night crew grumbled, while others gave little cheers. After that initial murmuring, the room grew silent. Today, Andrew didn't puff on a cigar, but he held his hands behind his back.
Well, there ain't no easy way to say this.
Andrew flapped in place, and he let his eyes fall ever so slightly. Marcus's breath caught in his lungs, and he pressed his lips together.
So I might as well just say it. We're probably gonna get crusaded.
Someone screamed. The troll beside Marcus fainted. Karen's black hole became a whirlpool of pale blues. But then thick blue lines crisscrossed her face like lightning. Even Marcus's stomach violently throbbed in him. Crusaded. He had heard the term from his moms, and while attending the dungeon college. Deep down, Marcus had always known he would face such a thing one day. Monsters started yelling questions all at once, and Andrew tried to regain control. The air stank of absolute dread. A magic aura flowed over them, and a voice calmly said,
Stop.
The noise died down almost instantly, and everyone, including Marcus, turned their attention over to the lone figure in the doorway at the far end of the room.
Is that?
Yes.
The boss was a tall woman dressed in a sky blue hooded robe. She wore gloves over her hands, and the blackness of her hood concealed her face. Still, immense power radiated from her body, so it was no question as to who this was. The boss stepped up to Andrew, placed her hands behind her back, and then nodded.
Hey, listen up. As you know, we've been conducting research here. And by we, I mean the boss.
The boss nodded again.
The reason we've been having so many murder hobos is because of a certain religious order of bitches have been trying to gauge our strengths. Well, they figured it and made plans accordingly. We got intelligence from other dungeons. They say that this order's been sending out more leaked strike forces to various sites across the world. Our boss belongs to a coven of mages, you see. Well, the other members are being hit too, and we're next.
A sudden grumble resonated through the crowd.
There is some good news. The good news is, we still got time to prepare. But not a lot, I'm afraid to say.
How much time do we have?
Andrew looked over at the boss, who gave him a glance in return. She nodded.
Today, sometime before sunset. With that being said, day shift, rest till it's time, eh? Night shift, go home and sleep. As soon as it's your turn, you better come back, because we're probably gonna be knee-deep in shit.
Another chorus of panicked whispers and groans rippled through the crowd. And yet, they weren't as numerous as before.
Now, we got a plan. The boss came up with this strategy that's gonna help protect our labs. Here's how it goes. S-ranked, raise your hands on respective body part.
A dozen monsters, including Nina and her whole crew of friends, raised their hands.
You'll be stationed in the chamber closest to the boss room. Next, A-ranked.
Other monsters raised their hands.
You'll be in the next set of rooms. B-ranked.
This time, Lars raised his hand along with many others.
We're gonna actually have you all set up barricades and fight in the hallways between the A-ranked rooms.
A sudden sour expression covered Andrew's face.
Lastly, C-ranked.
Marcus raised his hand. Karen's face swirled with pale blues and dark blue lines. There were almost as many C-ranked monsters as there were B-ranked ones.
Sorry to say this, but you're the front lines. The fighter that's gonna slow these bastards down. The only solace I can give you is that the boss said if we win, you'll be raised back.
Oh, Marcus.
Support staff, with the exception of the teleporter console operators, will be sent home immediately.
Andrew frowned a little.
I'll call you when this is all over, one way or another. Now, before you get all sad and depressed, I do have a little more good news.
The anticipation in the air hung heavy like poisonous gas.
Not only is the boss gonna arm some of you with great magical defenses, especially you C-ranked, she's also gonna pay you double time.
Marcus clapped while many others cheered. Hearing this small amount of joy caused others to join in, and after a few moments, everyone started applauding loudly.
Good to see those ice spirits. We're gonna need it for what's to come. If you check out the map, you'll see your placements. Now go. The strike forces were said to be far away, but they could arrive at any second.
The boss gave the group one last look before she walked toward the door she had emerged from before. Andrew floated beside her. Monsters stood up around them, so Marcus started to rise as well. He stopped when he noticed that Karen just stayed seated. Her face was a mask of blues.
Hey, we're going to be okay. We're tough. There's no way that the elite hobos will make it to the boss's room.
Karen turned toward him.
No, but I'm still scared. Not for me, but for you. You're gonna be one of the first ones they fight. You might die.
I'll probably die.
Karen's face grew bluer, if that were possible.
Don't say that.
If I die, then they'll just raise me.
But have you ever died before? Do you know what it's like?
Well, no.
It could be the most painful thing ever. I don't want you to die. You're so kind and amazing and...
Her face hole twinkled with green and yellow stars.
Just be careful out there, okay?
I promise. I'll do my best not to die.
Karen tucked some hair out of her face and behind her ear.
I'm gonna be mad at you if you do. If you die and have to be raised, then you...
She shifted in her seat.
You have to buy me a drink.
Marcus laughed a little.
Well, that's not a fair bet. I'm probably going to have to take you out for a drink. Not that it would be a bad thing, and it would be fun.
More greens and yellows flourished upon her face.
Yeah, it would.
Karen's words were almost a whisper in the depths of his mind.
So how about this? Let's just set a date to have drinks after we get through this, as a celebration.
A date?
Karen's green lines intensified, and little yellow circles whirled around in dizzying patterns.
Yeah, like next Wednesday or next Thursday. You know, like day of the week.
Oh, right.
Slight grays fluttered in the midst of her greens and yellows.
Sure, how about Friday after work? You're off on the weekends too, right?
Oh yeah, good point. Sounds like a plan.
He rose up and held a hand out to her.
Come on, I have to go see where I'm at.
Karen allowed herself to be pulled up, and then she walked Marcus out. When they got to the hallway, Marcus found that she was going in the opposite direction.
You be careful.
Marcus scoffed.
I'll try. We are about to be crusaded, so that's a bit of an unrealistic goal.
Right. Then stay alive.
Marcus nodded and then strode away from her. As soon as he was free from her view, he frowned. The unease and tension he had kept inside him flushed out. Grim anxiety exploded in his throat, and the urge to throw up nearly strangled him. He caught the eye of a tall, gaunt-looking man beside him. The man didn't have much hair, but he had sharp ridges that jutted from his forehead. A tattered, dark blue dyed fur toga covered his torso and waist, and he carried a sickle sword. Just like Marcus, the man was a C-ranked monster. Marcus frowned at the man.
Yeah. Me too, buddy. Me too.
Good luck.
You too. Die well.
You too.